The alien had arrived in the dead of night, and by morning, everyone on the outpost was whispering about her. No one could deny her presence. She shimmered like liquid starlight, her skin a pale silver that caught the sun's rays and scattered them into tiny prismatic shards. Her eyes were vast and black, depthless as the void between galaxies. When she spoke, her voice reverberated not in the ears but in the bones, as though her words carried their own subtle gravity. Her name, or what humans translated it as, was Sarenth, and she claimed to hail from a world orbiting a red dwarf in a system too faint for human telescopes to have yet recorded. She walked among the people of the Mars frontier colony with a calm that belied the stir she caused, and though she was courteous and strange in equal measure, it was not her appearance nor her origin that confounded the colonists. It was her choice. Sarenth, the alien woman with technology and knowledge that outstripped human comprehension, had announced, calmly, publicly, and without hesitation, that she wished to choose a human partner. A companion, a mate, however the translation filters rendered it. And the human she had chosen was no ambassador, no scientist, no figure of power or prestige. She chose Elias Reed, a 35-year-old maintenance worker, whose days were spent repairing oxygen scrubbers and patching up leaky dome seals. No one could understand why. The beginning, whispers on Mars. Elias himself was the most baffled of them all. He was a quiet man, stoop-shouldered from years of labor, with calloused hands and a habit of avoiding eye contact. He lived alone in one of the prefabricated habblocks on the colony's outskirts, the kind of man who drew little attention, and that was how he preferred it. His greatest pride was in the work he did that nobody noticed, because when he did his job right, life in the domes continued smoothly, and no one thought about the endless machinery keeping them alive. The day Sarenth appeared at his door, Elias nearly dropped the toolkit he was carrying. She regarded him with those fathomless eyes, and though she said nothing for several long moments, Elias swore he felt his every thought peel open under her gaze. Then, in a tone as serene as a lullaby, she said, "Ooh, I have chosen you." Word spread like a dust storm. Scientists petitioned to study the alien. Politicians demanded explanations. Elias, however, wanted none of it. "I don't know what she wants," he told the colony council, fidgeting with the hem of his work jacket. "I'm just me. Fix things. That's all." But Sarenth was insistent. She followed Elias, never intrusively but always present, always watching with curiosity. When he tightened bolts on the pressure valves, she crouched beside him, observing. When he patched a tear in the polymer dome, she traced her fingers over the weld as though learning the language of his work. She asked questions not about politics or science but about him. "Why do you stay here, Elias Reed?" she asked one evening, as the sun sank low and painted the Martian sky in bruised shades of orange and violet. "Why do you keep machines alive for others who do not see you?" Elias shifted uncomfortably. "Because someone has to. If the scrubbers fail, if the seals crack, we all die. It's not glory work. But it matters." Sarenth tilted her head, as though memorizing the cadence of his words. "Yes, you see clearly. The middle, questions and doubts." The colony's population split into factions. Some believed Elias had been chosen as part of a hidden agenda, that Sarenth wanted a human she could manipulate, a pawn in some larger cosmic game. Others thought Elias was hiding something, that perhaps he carried genetic anomalies or subconscious traits attractive to alien biology. Still others simply scoffed. Why would a being of stars lower herself to consort with a man who smelled of machine oil and lived in a one-room hab? Elias endured their stares, their whispered suspicions. He tried to ignore Sarenth, but it was difficult. She was different. When she laughed, the air itself seemed to vibrate with warmth. When she touched a broken machine, it often hummed back to life, as though her very presence mended fractures. She was terrifying in her beauty and incomprehensible in her patience. One night, over recycled whiskey in the colony's dim-lit bar, Elias confronted her directly. "Why me?" he asked. His voice was hoarse, his eyes bloodshot. "You could have picked anyone. Leader. Genius. Someone who matters. Not me." Sarenth studied him, her expression unreadable. Then, with surprising gentleness, she reached across the table and placed her hand over his scarred, grease-stained fingers. "On my world," she said, "life is long. We master the sciences. We bend the fabric of the cosmos. Yet we have forgotten simplicity. To choose not the grandest star, but the quiet light that keeps one warm in darkness." Her voice softened further. "I do not seek a partner who shines for others. I seek one who does not abandon his duty, even when unseen." Elias swallowed hard. No one had ever said such things to him. No one had ever seen value in the quiet persistence that defined his life. Still, doubt gnawed at him. He couldn't shake the suspicion that he was little more than a curiosity to her, a human experiment, an oddity she would discard when she grew bored. Yet, the days became weeks, and Sarenth remained. She learned his routines, asked about his childhood on Earth, laughed at his dry humor, and walked with him beneath the dome lights like they were stars. Slowly, impossibly, Elias began to believe she meant what she said. The conflict, fear of the unknown. But the colony was not content to leave them be. The council grew nervous. Rumors spread that Sarenth was gathering intelligence, that her kind might soon descend upon Mars in force. The human partner, Elias, was seen as a weak link, vulnerable to manipulation. One evening, Elias was summoned before the council. The chamber was crowded. Scientists, engineers, officers, all staring at him like a specimen. "You must understand, Mr. Reed," the governor said, her voice clipped. "This alien's interest in you jeopardizes the safety of the colony. We need to know what she wants. You must tell us everything. Or, we may have to insist on her departure." Elias clenched his jaw. He remembered Sarenth's words, the strange sincerity in them. Against the weight of their suspicion, he felt a surge of quiet defiance. "She hasn't harmed anyone," he said. "She doesn't want to. She just sees differently. Maybe that's not a threat. Maybe it's a gift." His words carried little weight. The council demanded surveillance, interviews, tests. Sarenth submitted without protest, but each time she was questioned, her answers baffled the scientists further. She spoke of time as a fabric woven not in one direction but in many, of stars as living entities that whispered their own songs. And yet, when asked why she wanted Elias, she always said the same thing. Because he understands what it means to be unseen. And yet he continues. The scientists rolled their eyes. The politicians grew impatient. But Elias felt something stir inside him. The climax. The storm had happened on the 82nd day since Sarenth's arrival. A dust storm, massive and sudden, descended on the colony. Winds shrieked like banshees, hammering against the domes. Power grids flickered, oxygen scrubbers strained, and cracks began to splinter across the primary habitation dome. Elias was already in the maintenance tunnels when the alarms blared. He worked feverishly, sealing fractures, rerouting power, tightening bolts with trembling hands. The storm was merciless. One wrong move, one failure, and the dome would rupture, dooming thousands. In the chaos, Sarenth appeared beside him. She did not cower from the shrieking wind or the groaning metal. She placed her hand against the trembling dome wall, her silver skin glowing faintly. Where she touched, the fractures stilled, as though the material itself remembered how to be whole. "Go," she told Elias. "Save the heart of this place. I will hold the skin." Elias hesitated. If she faltered, she would be torn apart. But in her eyes he saw no fear, only trust. He ran. He rerouted the oxygen feeds, stabilized the generators, and sealed the final breach. Hours passed in desperate labor, until at last the storm subsided, leaving the colony battered but alive. When he returned to the dome wall, Sarenth was still there, collapsed, weakened but alive. Elias knelt beside her, cradling her in his arms. "You could have left," he whispered. "You didn't have to," she smiled faintly, her voice a fading echo in his bones. "Now you understand. I chose you because you never abandon what you protect. Neither will I." The ending. Understanding at last in the days that followed, the colony's whispers changed. They no longer spoke of suspicion or ridicule, but of awe. The alien woman had risked herself to save them, and the man she had chosen had worked until his body nearly broke to keep them alive. No one could understand why, at first. Why an alien of unimaginable power and grace would want a quiet, overlooked human for her partner. But then they began to see it. In the way Elias walked beside her. Not behind, not ahead. In the way she listened when he spoke, as though his words were treasures. In the way their strengths wove together. Not in spectacle, but in persistence, in devotion, in the refusal to abandon what mattered. Elias no longer asked, "Why me?" He knew the answer. And when Sarenth took his hand, her fingers cool and steady, he felt something he had never felt before. That perhaps even the quietest light could be seen after all. Together, they walked out beneath the Martian sky, where storms would always come and machines would always need mending. And though the colony still whispered, Elias no longer minded, because he understood her choice now. And in time perhaps so would everyone else.